Hello everyone and welcome. So today we're going to take a look at macros. So first I'm going to kind of describe what a macro is, and then I'm going to show you how to make a macro, and then I'll kind of just briefly touch on the different applications that you can do and how you can assign it to buttons on a MIDI controller and how to assign it to your keyboard and whatnot, those kinds of things. So first, a macro. So what is it? So first I will show you and get you to open the key commands window here. So under File, Key Commands, and in this window on the bottom here you see this thing called Show Macros. If you open this up, this is where all of the macros are going to show up. So I've already made a macro for me to kind of demonstrate and build off of. And when you open up the macro itself, it has the string of key commands that you have assigned to that macro. Now, once you're done this, to assign a particular key as far as the keyboard goes to that macro, you have to actually go up here in this section and you got to find the macro folder, which is right here, and there it shows up. So just to kind of further clarify, this is the macro that I created and assigned a bunch of these different key commands, and once it's there, it shows up under this macro folder, and then you can assign key commands or strings of keys on your keyboard to that particular macro. So for instance, this Control-Shift-P, I'll just remove that, and if I was to assign that again, I have to click on this little box, hit Control-Shift and then P, and then it shows up here as just this little in this little box here. But to actually assign it, you have to push this button here. So assign key to that. Now it is assigned to it. And furthermore, you can add more than one key command for that macro or key command if it's a singular key command. So for example, go to Control-Shift L. So right now you can see here Control-Shift-L is already assigned to edit lock. So I'm going to pick a different command, Control-Shift-O, which is not assigned to anything, so I can assign it here, and I can have two different keys to activate the macro. So that's kind of handy if you wanted to have more than one for whatever reason. I'm going to stick with one. So now I think it's kind of relevant to show you what I've done with this thing first, and then I'll show you how to actually do it to build your own macro from scratch. So essentially here, this macro, zoom select all things, what I called it. So what this key does is it selects all of the events in the project, and then it sets the transport locators to that selection, and then it inserts a cycle marker, so you can see down here, and then it's going to zoom to the selection horizontally, and then it's going to deselect everything, which is called select none. So I'll just kind of demonstrate that. So it's going to do a whole bunch of stuff. Let's start by let's change that. Let's change the zoom. And now I've assigned that to Control-Shift-P. So if I hit Control-Shift-P, it did all of those things super duper fast, all in just one button. So what it did was it selected everything. You could see those events go dark, and then it comes back to not dark. That's because it selected it, and then it set these locators to the kind of max endpoints here, and then it created this cycle loop thing, whatever it's called, and then it deselected everything. So this is really handy if you do like what I do, is to have everything. First of all, let's go here. Let's go select all. Oops, select all the events. Actually, let's do this first. So select all events and hit the P button. It does kind of half of what I have in this macro. It selects everything and then it assigns these locators. So what I like to do is to have this, what I call a song export. So no matter when, if I accidentally move these locators, which is going to determine where the song is going to be exported from the beginning to the end. That's how and where it's going to export from and to. I always like to have a cycle marker so that whenever I accidentally change this thing, I could just go double click, and now every time I'm going to export this song, each and every time it's going to be this exact same length, and it's going to start and end at the exact same time. So that's something I use a lot. Now, what I cannot do is what I can't do without this macro is doing what I'm doing with the macro, if that makes sense. So let's delete that. So in order to do what I have to do in the macro, without using the macro, is go Control All, then P, and then I'd have to click here, which I think is a shortcut on the keyboard, but let's just say I click here, and then I deselect everything. So that's 3 different things, 2 on the keyboard, 1 pointing, etc. Whereas I can just have a macro to do that all in one little punch of a button or whatnot. So that's why macros are super handy. And you can do this with any kind of string of events. So let's go back into our thing here, into key commands and show macros. So I'll build this from scratch now so that you can kind of get a sense. So let's call it zoom select all thingy again. So now, one thing that's kind of difficult is finding the actual key commands, or commands, I guess they're called. Yeah, all of these different commands, because they're named something specific, and if you don't search or know what that specific thing is, then it's hard to find. Like select none, that can be maybe select nothing, or deselect or unselect or whatnot. So, and to know that it's in the edit folder is also another thing that you have to kind of just know. But either way, so yeah. So to actually build these macros, you have to do the following. So you select the actual macro. So this is a macro and this is a macro. So select the macro, and then you have to go up in here and find whatever it is you're going to do. So let's go with edit select all, because I know these things already. I'm just going to search for them. Select all right here. Now that this is highlighted, you go here and click the add command, and it adds it to that macro, the selected macro down here. Then next we're going to go transport locators. Maybe that doesn't work. Okay, so this, yeah, this here is the designated folder that it's in. I don't think if you're searching that it's going to work. So just search up locator. Now what is it called? Locators to selection. Now we are in the media folder, and that's not it. So if you just keep hitting this button, locators to selection, that's the one there. So just keep clicking that button until you find it, or find whatever you're looking for, and then you have to go on this section here and then add the command. If I was to add it right here, oh, okay, that works too. But it just keeps adding after that. If I was to select here and go with lock record, then it happens right after the selected command. So just make sure you're doing this all in a row, or all sequentially the way that you want it to be. And I think if you drag, no, you can't drag these things over. So you have to make sure that you're adding the commands in sequential order that you want it to be. Yeah, so now you go insert cycle. Let's be more specific. Cycle marker, add command, and then zoom, etc., etc. Actually, I don't really have to go through this because you kind of get the point. And then you add all of these things up. I'm just going to delete this macro until you get that. And then, like I said, you go up here into this macro folder and you assign the key. Make sure it's not assigned to some other key command, or other command I should say, because then you're going to be activating two commands at the same time rather than just one like you would want it to. So yeah, that's really handy for specific things. One thing, like I've shown you, like to do a string of 5 different commands, where I can easily just do something like that, create a particular cycle marker that is exactly what I want it to be for whenever I'm exporting the song. Another thing is you can have it export, or not export, is you can have it zoom out horizontally and vertically. Yeah, just zoom out to like the full project or whatever. So what you can do is, let's go back in there. I think I know some of these commands. Oops. File key command. So you would have to select all. So use the select all thing there. Then you would have to zoom. Actually, let's just go in here. Zoom. You would have to go zoom to selection horizontally, or I think this zoom to selection would do just that. It would zoom. Let's try it here. Alt S. Oops. Zoom to selection. So select Alt S, and it zoomed out to all of the events. Now let's zoom in horizontally. I mean vertically. Alt S, and there you go. So that is one thing in itself. The Alt S, that's one thing, and select all is one thing. So what you could do is join those two together to make one macro if you wanted, something like that. That's you look at all these things. That's something else you can do. Now, another thing that I wanted to show you guys is that you can actually assign those macros to a button on one of your devices. So if you go, oops, that was the wrong thing. Or no, wait. Yeah, if you go into device setup, then you select any one of your kind of remote control things here. So right now I have this Behringer BCF 2000, which looks like this. Now, if you can see on the screen, I have set to F1 under macro the zoom select all thing. So F1 in this case is to hold down this shift button here and push this button right here. So shift F1, F2, F3, F4, etc. Now if I actually do that, it's going to activate that macro. And it doesn't have to be a macro, it can be any string command or any command in and of itself. Now you can also assign that to a controller like this that has any of those F functions. So if you can see down in here, which I can't move, or hold on, if I can get close enough here, there's an F7, F8, F5, F6. When you hold down the shift button and you click these buttons, that is an F command. So you can assign it to those as well. Let me just move this. So that's super handy. Let's just kind of demonstrate this here. So I'm gonna go into my channel. So let's just pretend here, F8, I would have to select macro here, and then it would be on this secondary menu here, this command, and I would click on it, and then it would say zoom select all thing, and I would select that, and then every time I click the shift and then the proper button, it activates that command. Now, just to further demonstrate, I'll do it. So just like that, using either that button on my MIDI controller or using the keyboard commands that I've assigned it to, or keyboard keys, I should say, more specifically. So yeah, hopefully that helps you guys. I wanted to kind of do a demonstration of macros sometime soon, and finally got around to doing it. I myself have not used any macros except for this one that I just showed you guys. And I'm probably going to be thinking of different situations where I'll need macros, or not necessarily need, but would want to create a macro for different things. So now that I have this thing in mind that you can make these macros, and that I know how to do it and assign it and all of these things, now I'll probably be looking for what I can make into a macro, and eventually I'll probably have like 1 or 2 or up to 5 or so macros that once I have those things will no longer want to do without the macros. But anywho, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully that was helpful, and take care, bye-bye. Maybe even share what kind of macros you use on in your Cubase setup that you have, and that way we can share with everyone what you use macros for. Because I'm sure there's a lot of different applications. Like, even if you're going into the edit window, like this here, there's probably some pretty good macros that you can come up with for that. But yeah, anyways, thanks guys, take care, bye-bye, and see you next time.